So, obviously, welcome to Conversations in Pop Culture. I'm your host, Andrew Davis. And obviously, I have with me comic creator, writer, artist, Blair Shedd. So, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
I am very excited because obviously, I have a bunch of your comics, I have a bunch of your covers, and I didn't even know I had some of your covers. And I think a lot of people know your work between Doctor Who and Robotech and a few other properties, but they might not know that you did that work. And so I am very curious how you got into comics.
Uh, I mean, if you want to go all the way back, it goes to me being like 8 years old and saying to my parents, I either want to be a comic book artist or I want to be a rap star. And my lack of natural rhythm sort of killed one of those. Uh, and inability to win any rhyming contests. So uh, yeah, I just luckily had parents that never said no to something like that.
And then obviously, even going off of that, going from obviously being into comics and wanting to be a comic artist, how did you break into the industry? Because I think you came in pretty much around 2010, maybe even a little bit before that. And obviously, the landscape in comics has changed dramatically in the last 12 years. And 2010 was a different era. And so, what was that like really coming into comics and then getting into IDW and sort of just coming into the landscape? Because obviously indie comics were not where they are. Kickstarter didn't exist. Social media existed, but it wasn't where it is today. And so what was that like and really breaking in?
Well, when I broke in, it was like you said, about 2009, 2010. Um, I first had a pinup in a Red 5 comic book series called Afterburn. Um, and I got that by just, they had like an open, any artists who want to submit. And I had, at the time, I think I was working at a graphic arts, I was working in a graphic arts job at a marketing company. And that wasn't going very well. And uh, come 2010, I heard that they were doing a Doctor Who comic, and I figured I draw. I like Doctor Who. I've liked Doctor Who since I was a kid. Why can't I do this too? And I ended up making a bunch of sample pages, and I put them on my DeviantArt account that I had at the time. And one of the people that noticed was Charlie Kirkhoff, who did a lot of the coloring on those books and still does. And he put in a good word for me with the editor, Denton Tipton. And Denton, I also sent those sample pages to Denton, the editor, and he liked them as well. And I eventually got a email that said, "Hey, do you want to do 2 issues of Doctor Who?" And then the next day, I got an email that said, "Sorry, we were wrong. Can you do 4 issues of Doctor Who?" And that was my first job, basically, my first mainstream job. I've done indie, really indie underground stuff before that no one has ever read and probably never will read, but that was my first, mainstream book.
Yeah, and even let's talk about Doctor Who because obviously Doctor Who is a licensed property. And so there was the TV show, it's been around forever. I question whether Doctor Who came first or the entire planet of Earth, yeah, at this point. But, joke aside, obviously IDW licensed it and they licensed it from the BBC and all that stuff. And so, what was that like really coming into Doctor Who and then doing, interiors on Doctor Who initially? Because I think that's where you started and really drawing those pages because that is fascinating. And obviously, other people have drawn Doctor Who before you.
Mm.
Other people have drawn it since you sort of left doing the interiors. But even to be a fan and to get that opportunity, because it does take a lot of trust in a lot of ways for a company to say, hey, this is a licensed property and you can't mess it up. And there's parameters, and we feel comfortable enough with you to actually work on this project.
Well, I had to do sort of a tryout. I had to do like turnarounds of the 10th Doctor, David Tennant, And that's a turnaround for anyone who doesn't know is when you draw the character from basically all angles, so they know you can draw the character, close-ups, emotions, him being happy, sad, whatever, um, along with my sample pages. And I think that all went to the BBC, and they have a department that reviews that, or a person that reviews that. Um, and after a few tweaks, they didn't like the way I drew David Tennant's nose. uh, they said, no, you draw it like it's crooked. It's much straighter, and I had to show them on a photo that no, his nose does actually go off to the side just slightly, but they weren't having it. So I basically drew it exactly the way they wanted it, and then when it came to the comic, I just went back to the way I was drawing it.
It's kind of funny
But
in a lot of ways.
yeah. And I never really got any notes on my likenesses past that. But there's always well, small notes, but there's always that process where you submit, unlike say if you were working on Spider-Man or something like that. I don't often hear people getting too many notes on what Peter Parker is supposed to look like. Most people get them right, but they will often have notes on characters based on actual actors and such.
And then even going further, because obviously, this really is sort of some of your first work. And so what was that like? Because obviously a lot of people in comics grind, and I'm gonna say it very nicely, they sort of get a shitty character to do, or they get what is called a B book to do, or they get a
Hmm.
backup story first. And they don't usually get front and center, they don't get their name, writer up top, artist down below, and also being associated immediately with a big name property. And so, what was that like for you? Because obviously, being a fan and even diving into that, and then sort of, I don't want to say you were thrusted into the limelight, but you kind of were thrusted into being a little bit of a big player on the first round out. And so, what was that like? Because that doesn't usually happen that way, from what I know about comic writers and artists and even companies trusting you to go out and sort of do Doctor Who. And everybody knows Doctor Who. And also, if you screw up Doctor Who, it's very hard to hide
Oh yeah.
because of all the fans and everybody who's actually coming out to IDW for Doctor Who at that time.
Well, luckily I wasn't thinking too much about that at the time, or I probably would have like keeled over from the stress. But it, I mean, at the time, or still, I'm one of the only Americans who's drawn for Doctor Who. Um, there have been other Americans who've written and drawn and such. Matthew Dow Smith, Josh Adams has drawn, uh, but it's still a very small list, and it didn't really dawn on me at the time how odd it was that I think it's partially because IDW is still a smaller company, and someone like Denton is willing to bring on new talent to try them out. And uh, at the time, they were really open to who they were having on the book, and they had a lot of different styles and a lot of different artists. And uh, personally, it was rewarding to uh, get that attention from fans, and because yeah, like you said, I'm a fan. I've been a fan since I was a little kid watching on PBS in Vermont in the '80s, watching the Fourth Doctor, and I mean, even then, I could still recognize the show was a little bit cheap, but I still loved it because it was creepy and atmospheric, and it, the Doctor, the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, the actor at the time, had those big wild eyes and the long scarf, and it was just a real weirdly creepy yet compelling show, and I kept watching. So when I started to go to conventions and people would actually start coming up and asking me if I was a fan and recognizing my work, yeah, it was pretty fantastic.
And then to even go further into this, because obviously you did the interior stuff and then you moved over to cover work.
Hmm.
And I have pictures because pictures are fun. And I think you did this cover, which is a
Yep.
GameStop exclusive. There will be no meme stock jokes, so please hold your applause right there. I think that you did this one as
Mhm.
well, and I think also this one,
Yep.
and I think that there's a few more. I'm not. I think this is yours, and then I also think that this is yours. And so obviously, what was this like moving from doing interior work to doing cover work, and also I think you might have done some cover work and crossed over while doing interiors and getting to play in that sector too, because covers are very important and they sell books.
Yeah. They I did get to do when I was on my first 10th Doctor run, I got to do one cover, and it was like a B or C cover for the first book I worked on, but then I didn't do any other covers. And then eventually Denton said, "Hey, do you want to do some covers for the book, because we don't have any story for you right now?" They had other artists on the interior at the time, and I said, "Sure." Like you showed, some of them were GameStop exclusives, some of them were alternate covers. That one in particular was interesting because uh, I originally drew it up pretty much as you see it. I did it in pencil and everything, and then I digitally inked it and colored it. But the BBC said, no, we don't want them in steampunk clothing. So I had to redraw the whole thing, same pose, change out the background slightly, and put them in normal clothing. And then the BBC said, no, you know what? That's okay. You go ahead and do it. Just make some minor changes. So I had to go back into the original file and then make those minor changes and then recolor the whole piece again. And that's how you finally got the steampunk Doctor GameStop cover.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that it's GameStop because obviously the days where Hot Topic and GameStop have comics and have their own variants is long gone. The
Hmm.
days that Spencer's has their own variants is long gone. And obviously other companies have their variants and different companies, it's just the Newberry Comics and they have their own variant line. But it's also very interesting where obviously what was that like? Because it's kind of cool that you're in GameStop and in an untraditional, I guess, comic environment as well. And it's a fun kind of cover. And it's also a pain in the ass to find now.
Yeah, I only got a few copies of it myself. I never got to see it in the wild, so to speak. I didn't actually see it on the shelves. I've seen some of my Newberry comics alternates on shelves, but I didn't get to see uh, that one in particular at GameStop. Uh, I did see it on their website for a long time, and then of course I don't think you can get it anymore, not without hitting up eBay or something.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating. And I also think that something like a GameStop cover just adds a lot more coolness to it in a lot of ways because it is sort of exclusive and it gets associated. And obviously, we're going to dive into Titan in a second, but one of the things that's very cool about you, and I think it's something that a lot of comic creators lack, is you've done interiors, you've done cover work, and you've done some other stuff. I think you've done some coloring to some degree.
Hmm.
You've done some flatting, just I think by nature, and whether you're flatting for a whole book or even just a cover or something of that nature, you've run everything in a comic per se. And obviously, you have a web comic that they're going to talk about in a little bit further
Hmm.
down the line. But
Hmm.
I think it's very important that a creator, if they can, does every job in a comic and they understand the process of it. And I think it's a real advantage. And I don't think it's just a comic thing, I think it's also in business. You know, you should not be telling somebody how to do something unless you're willing to do it or you have done it, I feel. And so, what is that like for you? Because I think it's a real advantage to your art style and also saying, hey, I'm doing a cover, but I also know how to do the interiors in the book.
Yeah, I've been like that with art since even high school. I've wanted to like I didn't I took drawing programs in high school. I took photography programs in high school. I took sculpture programs in high school, and learned to apply everything to what I was doing, which was still even in high school pursuit of making comics. Um, and then I went to the Kubert School of Art for 3 years, graduated from there, and of course they taught us even more uh, about every aspect of the business at that time, which was 1997 through 1999, 1996 through 1999, and which of course the process for a lot of things is completely different now. But uh, they did teach us a lot of things, and I did work at, like I said, graphic arts jobs, multiple graphic arts jobs, where I learned more about like Adobe Photoshop and the whole Adobe suite. So when it came time, I was willing. I do color my own work. I do my own flats, and yeah, do my own coloring. And like you said, with the webcomic we'll get to later, I do my own lettering and all that too. I prefer to do just the writing and artwork. And I have so much respect for colorists, so much respect for letterers after trying to do their jobs on my own. Um, but I've just been very lucky that editors have allowed me to do as much work in comics as I have, where they have let me color my own stuff, and they've always let me ink my own stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's, obviously every artist is different and every person is different and everybody has a different way they do business. But I also think just on a business level, it is super important that even creators understand the process.
Hmm.
Obviously I interview a lot of people in comics and they're writers, and I think they understand the process of how to produce a comic, but I don't think they truly understand how complicated it is. And obviously going from art to color and all that stuff, and even just color theory on itself. And I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm barely qualified as a writer in this sector, but I think it is super important that even if you suck at coloring, you should attempt to color your book at least once. I just ran a Kickstarter, and I don't ever want to run one again, but I
Mm.
now understand when I'm asking people about Kickstarters exactly what it means to be tired during your campaign. And it's a very valuable thing as an interviewer to understand, because I now get it. And unless you experience it, you're not going to get it. And so I think it's very important that people fully understand the process.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then obviously, what gets fascinating about you is IDW loses the Doctor Who license. Doctor Who wants to go in a different direction. The BBC wants to go in a different direction. And Titan Comics picks them up. And how did this come about? Because you were brought along for the ride in a
Uh,
lot of ways.
Sort of a little bit after the fact, the license changed. I sort of went, oh, I guess I'm never going to be working on Doctor Who again. And as soon as um, Titan started announcing titles and plans, some people were asking me through my social media when I was going to work on it again, and I had to say it's really not up to me at all. I mean, I'd love to, but it's up to Titan. And people started contacting Titan, and I reached out to Titan just to say, if you have anything. And they said, oh yeah, we noticed that people want to see you on the book, so uh they at first they threw me a few covers, and then Andrew James, my editor at the time, said, would you like to do the Ninth Doctor reintroduction book, the 50th anniversary book? And I said, oh, well, yeah, of course.
So let's even talk about this, because this is fascinating. There's a saying that sometimes in wrestling, and the reason why I bring this up is that there's supposed to be a heel, but the
Hmm.
fans determine who really is the good guy and who's the bad guy. And I was speaking to somebody, and it was like the girl I was speaking to, Charlotte Quill, she was supposed to be the heel, and the crowd said, "No, you're going to be the face." And so they had to sort of switch up the ending, and that seems like this is extremely similar. That a bunch of people were like, "Hey, we want you to work on this book in some capacity." And so, what is that like for you? That fans were like, "Hey, we want Blair to work on this book either as a cover or doing interiors or doing both or even being involved in somehow," because it's kind of a cool thing when a company's like, well, I guess we don't have a choice per se.
I To this day, I'm still slightly paranoid that all my fans are actually like planted by some enemy that I don't know I have. That at any point they're just going to turn on me, or turn out to be fake, uh, paid for fans. And no, it was at the time pretty amazing that there are all these people coming forward and saying, hey, yeah, we want to see your artwork again in this book, and we're willing to actually go to the editors or go to the company and say, hey, yeah, put Blair on this. And I, I'm extremely grateful for that. And that that means that people must have enjoyed my previous work, and so that's flattering.
Yeah, and also I think the thing is that, and nothing against IDW, but Titan took a more, I think, hip approach to it, where they went to the Ninth Doctor, and I felt that they connected it more to the show than
Mm.
IDW did in a lot of ways. And then they went to the 10th Doctor and the 11th and the 12th and to the 13th. And I felt that the Titan books, and the Titan books still are very connected to the show and what's going on. And so, what was that like? Because obviously, that's just my vibe on it. I also think the covers were way more interesting and more connected as well. And so, what was that like for you? Because it was very much a fresh start, both on doing cover work as well as doing interior work. 'Cause you're reintroduced the Ninth Doctor. And so, what was that like for you? Because I can imagine as an artist, it gets stale at a certain point, especially when you're working on the same property over and over again. And I think Titan found a way how to sort of shuffle that up a little bit.
Well, I was lucky that in the sense that when I was working at IDW on the uh, 10th Doctor, and I did one story with the 11th Doctor, uh, that doing the Ninth Doctor was a completely different Doctor. I was drawing the same TARDIS interior again for the 10th Doctor, but my art style had changed since I worked at IDW. I had started out a bit cartoony, and then I got really into like Brian Boland and all of these more realistic rendered artists. So that's what came with me when I went and started on the Ninth Doctor book, and some of the covers that I was doing around then, including like some 12th Doctor covers. They were much more photo based. I was really a slave to photo reference, um, because I wanted to get these likenesses accurate. Uh,
Yeah,
which
to even talk about some of that, obviously this is one of them that's starting to become less cartoony.
mm,
Obviously, this is definitely more photo based. And we get something like this and we really dive into it. And then obviously something like this, which is just a fun cover. I just love the entire almost texture that's popping out in the background. And then I think this really is sort of one of the, quintessential photo based ones you've done. And so, what was this like really? And then obviously, I think there's this one too that's super cool, and that one's fun, and obviously these as well. And so, what
that
was
one in
this like?
particular, that one, it under my signature it says Maddie, because my daughter is the one. She was, I want to say, 8 years old at the time. She's the one that designed the alien the Ninth Doctor is holding. I said, design me a cute alien, do whatever you want, but make a cute alien. And she came up with this little drawing of this little cat type creature that had fiery wings. So I had to translate that into the line work, but it worked out pretty well. And my editor was like, "Oh, that's a cool alien." I said, "Yeah, no, my daughter drew that." So,
So what is that like? To even sort of sneak that in a little bit,
oh,
and
I have Easter eggs all over all of the work I've done. Even going back as far as the IDW work, I appear in the 10th Doctor uh, series that I worked on. Uh, at one point, there's alien trees attacking the people of London, and there's one guy that says, "Oi, Martian, get off our planet!" And he's hitting it, or about to strike this alien tree with a cricket bat. And I just decided to draw myself in there, and I left a note to Charlie, the colorist, to make sure it would, it looked like me. And when I worked on the Ninth Doctor series, I snuck myself in the background as a robot or my head in a jar on a robot body, kind of Futurama style. Uh, with
but
my head.
isn't that what comics are supposed to be about in a lot of ways? Is sneaking stuff in, knowing that it's there, also, letting some people know, but then not letting other
Mhm.
people know and seeing who spots it.
Mhm.
And it's kind of a fun thing. obviously, if I ever write a book, I'm going to be dropping a bunch of Easter eggs in there because I think it's fun. And I think that it becomes, saying, oh, what is this a reference to? And whether it goes somewhere, whether it doesn't, I think that's supposed to be fun. And obviously, it's Doctor Who as well. And I think that's the other thing is there's supposed to be stuff like that. And I feel like a Doctor Who book.
It's also just a way to pass the time. I mean, when you're working on backgrounds, it can get really dry if you're just drawing the desert or what have you for panel after panel. And like with that one section in that Ninth Doctor book, it was supposed to be the Florin Temporal Bazaar, which was this outdoor marketplace of illegal time equipment. And so my writer at the time, Kevin Scott, had a bunch of things he wanted me to sneak in there, and then I snuck in things in the background and added words and hidden references to my own. Like I had a reference to a Star Wars fan comic that I drew in high school, and I named a character in that Granix, and so I snuck his name into the Ninth Doctor comic as like Granix and Company selling temporal weapons.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant, and I think it's fun, and I think that's absolutely just fantastic in so many ways. And then obviously, this is one of my favorite covers you've done with Doctor Who, because that thing just looks so trippy.
That was
And
my ode to 2016. That was like one of the last covers I drew of that year, and I just said, I'm going to have the 11th Doctor looking grim and the planet is on fire. That's what's going to happen.
And it just catches your eye. You're walking into a comic shop, you got money to spend, you're an impulse buyer, and it just catches your eye in a lot of ways. I feel like that's what comics are supposed to be to some degree, and that's what a good cover I think is supposed to do, along with a variety of other stuff. And then there's some other things as well. Like this one is super cool.
I gave the pencil drawing of that to Peter Capaldi at New York Comic Con. Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, and he was like, "Oh," he was very grateful and told me that they actually read the comics on set to inform the character. So that was pretty cool.
Because this is just one of those things that's super cool. And then obviously going into that, this is another one that I feel is, sort of the photo style that you've done, along with a bunch of other stuff that's out there. And it's really sort of, I think this is one of the last Doctor Who's that you've done so far.
There were, I did a ton of covers for them because for their time, my editor said, just draw me some covers and we'll put them in our archive so we can bring them out later. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I have that one Missy cover, the 12th Doctor and Missy. Yep, there we go. That was drawn at about the same time as all the others, but sat in a vault for a while, so to speak. And then when they realized they had it, they had me do some minor changes to it, but published it anyway. And and I get a lot of feedback on that one.
So to even talk about that, because this is something that I think is absolutely fascinating about covers, is that some people understand that, you could go hire an artist to do a bunch of covers and you don't have to release all of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the idea that say, hey, look, I want you to do 15 covers and I'm going to figure out the problem of, what books they belong on later on. Obviously, you might have to change the issue number, but that stuff is very easy to fix. And so what is that like for you that I don't know if you know what book it's going to be on, or you're like, oh, wow, I just got paid and I'm happy. And oh, snap, I have a book coming out next month. Who knew?
Yeah, it especially at that time, I had no idea what any of these would show up on because they also had crossover books and team up books, and I didn't know if they would use it as a special cover there. I still have maybe a half dozen, 10 covers that I've never seen published that are Doctor Who related that are still out there. I did see today that they just announced, at least in one place, that I am doing another cover that should be out, I believe, next month or the month after. for the Fugitive Doctor series that they're coming out with.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that I would be, just if it was me, I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. I got a thing that I did like 6 months ago and it's coming out
Mhm.
now. That's awesome. And then obviously one of the things that you're known for and that I know you for, and this is going to lead right into Robotech, and I love Robotech. I love Macross. Is you've done the action figure stuff, and this is the Doctor Who action figure with the 13th Doctor.
Mhm.
This is obviously the TARDIS, and these are supposed to look like action figures or I guess toys and
Mhm.
whatnot. They're packaged a certain way. Um, and so what is this like? Because those were holiday books, obviously. They're sort of decorated a little bit holiday-ish, for lack of a better word. They look like toys. They got the proper, card stock on it that's supposed to look like. And so how did this idea come about? Because you've done it for Robotech, and I know that the idea isn't necessarily new, but it's also, really cool in doing this type of stuff because it hits a different niche, I guess, of a collector.
Yeah, they brought me on because I want to say IDW had me do one too. I can't remember for a fact if it would have. No, it must have been Titan because it was a Ninth Doctor cover. But anyway, Titan brought me on for Doctor Who ones and the Robotech ones, both at about the same time. Though the ones that you're showing right now were much later. Um, I'll get to Robotech, but briefly, they were a little bit more open with the package design. Doctor Who, I had to use their actual toy packaging templates and such when creating the cover, otherwise they didn't like it. So it was a bit more restrained and a bit more not as fun and free as some of the other action
Yeah,
figure
we're
and
going to
comic
talk
book
about
covers I
Robotech
do.
in a second because I'm a big Robotech guy.
Okay.
Um, I love Robotech. I love Macross. Um, but obviously, because that's kind of what I know you from, is
Mhm.
all this action figure stuff. And this is all the Robotech stuff. I mean, this is obviously Rick Hunter, Lynn Minmay, Global, one of the only characters whose name remained the same, and Roy Faulkner, obviously Lisa Hayes, Claudia Grant, obviously Chiron, Max Sterling, Ben Dixon, obviously Mira, and God bless her. I love this one because I know this toy. I know this
Mhm.
toy, and I think it's brilliant, like the 3-pack. And then obviously, the SDF one as like a super toy and battle pods. Obviously, another, Mira's battle armor and the VF1J. And then also this with Remix is super cool. So the reason why I wanted to show all those right off the top
Mhm.
is it's super cool how they look. I mean, these things look like they're an actual action figure. And they also have all of them have like custom back cards. And this is actually how like a toy is supposed to look like from the 80s. And this
Well,
was like the greatest era of toys ever. I mean, just to prove my point, you have Rick Hunter with his, ship, and you got Lynn Minmay in a different ship, and you got Lisa Hayes with something else.
I have to chalk it up to my editors on those because they're the ones that would usually suggest the pairing of vehicle with character. Um, but it was fun to do all of those. As you can see, as they went along, I started to get a little more realistic with the design of the toys. It like Rick Hunter, that first Rick Hunter you showed was the first one I drew. Yeah, and he was still a lot of line work, a lot of yeah, a lot of black lines. He looked a lot more cartoony in the action figure himself. But I slowly started to come off of that and tried to make everything look like actual toys. Yeah, like with the battle pod, especially with the battle pod and yep, and the battle armor. Those are two of my favorites. The way they came out.
And to even talk about this, because obviously toy designing is an art of itself. And, you know, my guest after you is Tom Hutchinson, who just did Critter, and he did the Critter action figure. And I'm not going to lie, these look like they're real toys. And I've had Adam Riches on who did the WWE action figures for Boom.
Hmm.
And I get comments when I put those things up on Instagram. Hey, where can I buy that toy? And that's what I mean. The Rick Hunter is a little stiffer, but when you
Hmm.
start going into something like Max Sterling, this looks more realistic. And this is starting to look like a real toy. She looks like a real toy in a lot of ways. And she looks like, an 80s toy. And so, what is that like? Because they look real and it's Robotech, and people know Robotech. People love Robotech. It was a huge deal when Titan decided saying, "Hey, we're going to bring back Robotech as a comic," and then you have action figure covers on top of that. Really, what I call embracing the tradition of Robotech, which
Hmm.
is an '80s cartoon.
I enjoyed putting those together, because it was uh, hmm, I'm just trying to figure out how to put this. Uh,
Because it brought back memories to me, and
yeah,
obviously I'm 29, so I caught Robotech at a very different age, where I
yeah,
went backwards, not forwards.
y-
But there are people who pick this stuff up, and they're like, "Oh man, this is awesome," because we didn't have these cool toys in the '80s with Robotech, but now we have it, and you have, I think, what is it, 2017?
yeah. Wait,
These
hold on.
covers.
I have this next to my desk. After I came out with all those covers, I saw this in a GameStop and I had to get it, uh,
See, exactly. It looks like
because
this. I mean,
yeah, after drawing all of those, I'm like, I need to have an actual figure.
it looks like it. See, like that's what's so interesting, and it's also like the Harmony Gold tag on it.
Hmm.
Like it looks a certain way. You got like the little like 3.99
Hmm.
thing on it, which is funny because obviously everybody's seen like those Kmart stickers on action figures that ruin the card and are like super
Yep.
acidic. Like it's so what it's supposed to be, and I don't know how
Yeah.
to explain it to somebody. And this is a little bit before my time, but I do remember going to Kmart and picking up action figures.
Hmm.
And,
Well,
and,
it's the
and
same
yeah,
thing for me when I was a kid picking up action figures, and I mean, I still have old backing cards for action figures. So that was part of my research process, was looking at like the stresses, the uh, the posts they put them on, would put on the cover, or would put on the backing cards. That's why I put in those stress lines, and just photographing bubbles to see how they look under certain lighting conditions. And yeah, I mean, these are all, I think John Tyler Christopher was doing them for Marvel, and so a lot of the companies, including Titan, were picking up after that, because they've also done action figure, not with me, but they've done action figure covers with like Assassin's Creed, and other books like that. Um, and I actually did another action figure cover for them for Sherlock, and I had to actually make him look like an anime version of Sherlock, so that was weird. But it was an anime version of the toy. It was weird. Um, but yeah, no, as someone who also used to, enjoy going into Kmart, Ames, Riches, and a bunch of other stores that don't exist anymore, um, it was I do remember what those toys looked like on the shelves, and I did a lot of research. I tried to see what the original Robotech figures looked like. We spliced them with the newer designs. We'd give them updated bodies slightly, but yeah, no, for me it was trying to pay attention a lot to the past. I didn't want to deviate from designs too much.
and also what's really cool about it is that there's a whole big thing with action figures now. Obviously sports cards are big. Comics are big. Action figures as collectibles are big, and then this sort of hits that niche in a lot of ways. And obviously, I think Boom did it. Obviously, Marvel's doing it, and with their Star Wars stuff that they
Hmm.
put out there, and even the X-Men stuff they're putting out there. And there's all these people that are not necessarily comic fans who say, "Hey, look, I like certain properties, and this fits my action figure collection." It's not an action figure, but it's action figure esque. And I think that's something that really also hits that niche. On top of it, it's also the idea that it's Robotech. And Robotech, even though Robotech gets shit for things, and people say, well, it's a little bit rough, and it's the fusion of three shows together, it does hold a lot of value for a lot of people saying, hey, this was the introduction to Mecha for me. This
Mhm.
was the introduction of a pretty solid Mecha show. Despite having issues, it's pretty good, and it was a gateway. And so, what is that like for you? Because there's a lot of attention on the entire property that Titan was putting out. Every issue mattered. There was a lot of variants, and there was a lot of
Oh yeah.
press for the first, I think, 5 or 6 issues really surrounding it.
Uh, I believe I even got invited to a comic book convention specifically because of those covers. I've had people come up to me with stacks of books to sign, and they're usually just like one each of all of those. I haven't even seen all of those in print that I've done. I think nearly 30 of them, if not more. And yeah, it's people are. I watched Robotech when they had it on um, VHS back when I was a kid, and my local video store had just very few copies, but I watched them over and over. So getting to work on the property was pretty amazing because it was another one of those childhood bucket list kind of check off moments. And the just seeing all the fans now still, I mean, or the last time I was at a comic book convention, they're still bringing up those covers to get signed. They're really into it.
And then obviously also you got to do, I think, Robotech. I think this was like Redux or Remix, and obviously Dana Sterling, which is I think Southern Cross and
Mhm.
New Generations or Next Generations. I'm not exactly sure the order, but obviously this is going into a whole new field with what they were doing and what they wanted to do. And so, what was that even like? Getting to even further go into the entire Robotech verse, for lack of a better word.
We didn't get too far into it because that was
It
especially
just
that
changed.
cover was near at
Changed.
the end of my run on Robotech because uh, they eventually wanted to do synthwave inspired covers. I'm not sure if they actually ever did that, but they were asking me to do it, and I was like, I'm not really a synthwave artist. Sorry. Um, though later on, I ended up doing synthwave stuff for commission, so I don't know. Maybe I could have done it, but no, that was fun exploring the wider Robotech verse, so to speak. It uh there was an alternate version of that cover, in fact, that she came with a helmet, but Harmony Gold didn't want the helmet in there, so that was dropped out. Um
It isn't. Don't you have a Robotech piece that's up for sale somewhere on the internet right now that was not used?
there I believe someone bought that. I didn't I haven't had
I
it for a
checked like
while.
3 days ago, so somebody bought it. It was like in the last like week. That's all I can
Unless it
say.
was up on, was it up on eBay or something like that, or
No, it was on this art site. Like I was just browsing because I actually do my homework, and I'm like, oh wow, like this cover wasn't used, and it's like an alternative cover, and it was on like
is
some like comic art auction site.
huh that might be I'll
It
have to
was
check because
super
it might
cool.
be my art rep used to have one of those up, and they haven't taken it down yet after it's sold. Is it the one of, like, I think just Rick Hunter and his helmet?
Yeah, 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 yeah. And like the helmet's sort of red and yellow.
Yeah. I believe that's sold. I don't know. I'll have to double check because I don't have it anymore. Someone else might be selling it though.
No, no, because I just saw it. I'm like, oh wow, that's kind of cool. You type in your name and like all
Hmm.
this stuff starts popping up. I'm like, oh, this is cool because you have some art that's on some of these auction sites, and
Yeah,
you know,
I've lost track of. I've sold so many covers, and I've sometimes even given away pieces that I don't even know where they are anymore. And yeah, I'll be on eBay or one of these art auction sites, and all of a sudden find my work there. Yeah. Um, but yeah, there are very few unused. They mainly wanted me for action figure covers. I only have one published non-action figure cover. I'm not sure if you have that anywhere. It's like uh, Robotech issue 5, cover E or something like that. It's It's just of one of the Veritech fighters with Rick in the background.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I might have missed it when I was going through Comic Vine. It might not even be on Comic Vine last time I checked. So I was going
Yeah.
through it, and I just know you from all the action figure stuff, and I'm slowly working on my action figure collection.
Mm.
It gets expensive very quickly.
Oh,
Is all
right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I
Some of them are like $4 a piece, and then some of them are like 25.
like I said, I haven't. It's I do have a copy of it here, just like a low resolution copy, because I don't even have a copy of the comic. But it's number 5, cover D, if you want to look that up later. But it's the only non action figure cover I did for them for Robotech.
And so obviously, this is what I know you from. This is the Doctor Who stuff. I think is the main stuff that I know you from. But then you've done other things too for Titan
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. And backing out of Robotech, as much as I love Robotech, and I thoroughly enjoy the action figure stuff because it just brings back so many good memories from me watching all like Robotech and watching every single episode in like 4 weeks.
Wow.
It was a task in of itself. All like, and then watching Shadow Chronicles on top
Mm-hmm.
of it. Great move. Bad idea in the long run, but totally worth it. Great stuff, and I might redo the entire thing. I mean, I got my Protoculture box, and I have to ask, I don't know what Protoculture is. I'm very confused on what Protoculture is to this day.
I have no idea. No.
I'm very confused, and I believe we need an answer, but I'm
Yeah.
not too sure if we're going to get one anytime soon. But I do want to back out of Robotech and dive into some other cool stuff, which
Okay.
is
Ah,
Torchwood.
Torchwood.
Fun
Yep.
stuff here. Your Torchwood stuff is fun.
Thank you. Yeah, that was during my drawing lots of lines period. That cover right there, I actually gave to John Behrman at a Boston Comic Con, and I said, I'm the guy that's doing these covers for the book, and he said, oh, great, thanks. And I said, can I get a photo and an autograph? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I paid for them. And then he turned around and went, wait, did you just pay for that? And I said, yes. He said, your money's no good here. And he said, come on, let's go do the photo anyway. And so I've met John a few times, and he's great.
So what is that like for you? Because obviously this is not the first time, but when you're working on it and then you actually get to see it in real life, the person who's doing all this stuff. I mean,
It's always stressful because you're like, did I draw them good enough? Are they going to look at whether or not they've looked at the book already? Are they going to look at it now and say, oh, that's what you think I look like? Oh, okay. It's always stressful, but just about everyone has been totally kind and receptive and thankful that I didn't make them look terrible. I mean, there's some reviewers out there who hate my work utterly and completely, but I can say nya 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 poo poo. The actual actor likes my work, so who are you to say that I drew their face wrong when they say I drew their face right?
it's kind of funny, and I must think, and it must be very rewarding for you that, oh man, I get to draw this person, then you get to see them, and then if you continuously get to draw them again, and do them on a cover or do some interior work or even do a commission of them, like you now say, oh man, he approves of what I'm doing, and then it also is probably reassuring for Titan or whoever you're working for that the person who is then the real actor and what it's based off of or is going to be based off of it is like, yeah, this works for me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so that must be just a super cool experience
Yeah,
altogether.
every time, and it's also one of those. I usually handle it pretty well. I don't fanboy out too much. I've had my moments around certain people where I've just sort of lost control. Not screaming and crying, but all of a sudden verbal diarrhea, and they don't know what to do with it. You're meeting someone for the first time, and you're telling them everything, and they're like, "I don't want to know." But yeah, every time it's almost this out of body experience, especially when I have been drawing these people so much and staring at their photos and then staring at my drawings of them. And yeah, it's trippy.
And then obviously even going into, the idea of even more just licensed products. Obviously you worked on some Assassin's Creed stuff,
Hmm.
you've worked on some Warhammer stuff. And so what is that like to work on that stuff as well? Because everybody knows Assassin's Creed. To some
Oh
degree,
boy,
everybody
yeah.
knows Warhammer.
Hmm. Warhammer was fun. It, I there was a lot to learn because I drew the main cover that they had published to mine was one of their armored characters firing a gun while being attacked by this tentacled creature, and I had to be told a few times that the armor wouldn't actually move in certain ways, so I had to redraw my pose. And but that was all fine. Working on Assassin's Creed was a lot harder um, because the company Ubisoft was very particular about how the characters looked, even more so than the BBC, and very particular about how the covers looked. And my editor was having to tell them, comics take a month to produce. This is not the cover of your video game. We can't spend a year working on it. Um, but I was still glad I got to do it because it's still I enjoy the Assassin's Creed series, so it was fun to actually get to work on it.
Yeah, and even going further into that, I mean, obviously, both Warhammer. I don't know how long Warhammer's been around for, but it's been around for at least, I think, 30 years.
Hmm.
I've been familiar with it for at least 20. And obviously, Assassin's Creed has many, different games, many different components to it, you know, and it's gone through a bunch of reiterations, and it's gone through almost every era at this point. And what is that like for you, knowing, hey, I got to work on not only Robotech, Doctor Who, Assassin's Creed, Torchwood, Warhammer. You've done some Ghostbusters stuff, I think, and there's a few other stuff that you've done. And these are like some of the biggest names where if you drop Warhammer, Assassin's Creed, Robotech, and Doctor Who, you're gonna hit almost every part of pop culture in some way or another. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many people in comics have actually done that.
I honestly don't know either. I mean, I don't necessarily see all the same guys in the same circles that I run in when I'm not always working with the same colorist or writer or interior artist or anything when working on these books. I've just been really lucky with both IDW and Titan being kind of eclectic companies as far as the IP that they have access to. So that gives me the opportunity to work on a bunch of different IPs. Um, I mean, working on, like you said, Ghostbusters for IDW. That's another bucket list property. Uh, I tend to look at stuff that I haven't gotten to do yet, rather than the stuff that I did get to do. I'm proud of what I did do, and I'm happy with what I did do. But uh, I, I I I spend a lot of time thinking, well, okay, what's next on the list?
So I'm going to ask because I have to. What is next on the list that you want to do? Because I don't know every little thing Titan has in their repertoire. I know they got Cowboy Bebop. I know that they got a few other things going on. Obviously, they just did Gun Honey, which Gun Honey was fucking amazing. That entire series, holy smokes, that was a brilliant, brilliant 4 issues. And I don't know what happens next, but Gun Honey 2, I mean, I'll take it all day. But what do you want to work on that's next that obviously may or may not happen, but
Uh,
that's I think the $1 million question, right?
yeah, no, my bucket list still has things on it like Spider-Man and Batman. I'd love to work on either or both. I think nowadays my style is a little more Spider-Man than Batman, but that's up to an editor to decide. I'm not holding my breath for either, but those are still my big two that I want to get at some point. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm not dead yet.
Fair
Yeah.
enough, fair enough. So as long as you're not dead, anything could happen. And the way
Right.
comics are going right now, anything and everything could happen. I mean, the play right now in comics that I feel is variance. And the way everybody gets now hired is that you somebody buys a store variant and then they say, "Hey, I got an artist. Can I run with it?" And it's a yes or it's a no. And that's kind of where I think everything is going in the comic realm.
I've made myself known to Titan that I'd be willing to do cover work for just about any of their books. So, you know, if they have a place for me, I'm there. Um, and I know other I've mentioned to other smaller companies I've worked with in the past that I'd also work on just about anything they'd have, because yeah, I'm the proverbial shark. I got to keep moving forward, uh, and I got to keep moving, or else
So,
I die.
so to even talk about that, because obviously we're going to talk about your webcomic as well. And this is obviously done on your time. It's
Mhm.
done on the internet. Pages are sometimes released in batches of 3, 5, maybe 10, but sometimes they're released every week or every 2 weeks or even sometimes once a month because obviously you're working.
Yeah.
And so, what prompted you to want to do a web comic and go the creator own route versus work for hire?
Well, in this case, it was mainly because for all this work I've done, I don't seem to have enough clout to really bust into any one publisher and go, "Hey, I got this great story and this great artwork. Do you guys want to publish it?" So I basically just went and got a WordPress site and said, I'm just gonna publish this online as often as I can." And like you said, I am right now. It is monthly, um, but a scene a month, which is, like I said, can be up to 10 pages, but at least two or three. Um, but it was a matter of control over the project, like you said, being able to do everything, and the fact that no one else is going to give me right now is going to give me that platform uh, to publish with them. And I really wanted to tell this story. It's based on my hometown, or it's based in my hometown, a fictionalized version of my hometown. But it's based in my hometown. It has elements of Doctor Who in it. It has elements of Supernatural and the Supernatural, but it has elements of the show Supernatural in it. And so it has all of these elements of things that I enjoy and that I know other people enjoy. Um, and I wanted to tell this story, and it just came to, this is the best way to tell the story right now.
And so to go even further into this, because I think this is one of the things that people in comics also don't understand is that, comics in a lot of ways is a temporary gig where there's no insurance. And if you're super busy and you're getting a lot of work and you're getting paid a decent amount of money, whether you're doing interiors or cover work, people say, "Oh, I want to go create my own thing. I want to go create my own project." But I feel once you go and say, "Hey, I'm going to go create my own company," leave Marvel, DC, Titan, or whoever, you're on your own. And if you succeed and you do $1 million, that's great. But what happens if you fail? Versus if you have a gig that's paying you and it's steady income, that's called a job. And you got to keep the lights on. And I think that's one of the things. Obviously, this is a weekend slash nighttime project for me. This entire show,
Hmm.
where there's no way in hell right now I can make this a full time gig, but I'm also keeping the lights on in my house and I'm also, able to eat and I'm not putting anybody in debt. And I think that's what people often understand. And obviously, I'm going to say something very nice. When you're 22, it's a little bit different when you're 50 and
Yeah.
you're doing this. Because when you're 50, if you're living, I don't want to say it and be mean about it, but if you're putting your family in debt when you're 50, maybe you got to reevaluate because you want to follow a quote unquote dream. And I
Yeah.
think this is a big issue in comics right now. And I see people, and unfortunately, I talk to a lot of people, and I'm a financial type of guy, and that's kind of my area I like to play in. And I know people who are running big Kickstarters of like 50, 60, 70,000, yet they have debt of 30,000, but they're following their dream, which I don't really get it. And so I think that's something that is also very complicated when you're producing comics versus, work for hire versus, creating your own project.
I uh, yeah, you're right, and that's why I do it uh as sporadically as I do, or I haven't been sitting down and just trying to get out a graphic novel or what have you. I did produce like 25 pages fully lettered in the past month, but I don't know how long that energy kick is going to go. But you're right. One, I'm never going to do a Kickstarter again. I did do a Kickstarter once. It was a horrible experience.
Join the club, man. Join the club.
Yeah, and I'm never going to do it again. If so, if someone else wants to start a Kickstarter and I'm part of it, but they're running it, that's fine. But I'm never going to run one on my own again. And yeah, it's a labor of love for a lot of people that they will put themselves into debt to get these stories out there, because we all, I think a lot of us creative types just have a sickness where, against our better judgment, we want to put these stories out there, no matter what it takes. A lot of people won't really get their. I have no guarantees of readers. Right now I have maybe 40 or so readers. I think, if I'm lucky. It's hard to tell from my feedback, but or from my
But I
stats.
think you're doing it the right way. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, it's not to embarrass you, it's not to beat you down. It's saying, hey, you're not putting anybody into a financial risk beyond a few $100s for your WordPress and your time.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, is that there gets a point where maybe you have to grow at a 10-year speed versus growing at a 2-year speed. And this is something that I think a lot of people in comics, and I see it all the time, saying, why does anybody want to work for Marvel or DC or any of these companies like IDW when they're talented and they could, go out on their own? Well, there's no guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
And well, what if you got a kid in college? What if you have 2 kids? What if you have a wife? What if you just have a dog and you want to give your dog, treats, and you don't want to have and worry about, oh, snap, I'm 3 months late on my rent. And I think that's something that, I've seen it a bunch of times where people are shaming people for wanting to work for DC and Marvel when maybe the product isn't the best it's ever been. But I'm like, well, people have bills. Why do people have a day job? And I
Yeah.
think that you're doing it the right way, where you're saying, look, I have a day job in comics, and then I do my project on the side that, fulfills the itch. And I
Right.
think that's a big issue in comics right now. I think a lot of people need to really start realizing that it's great to follow your dream, but it's also very important to be financially stable.
Yeah, I'm in a place where I can put this webcomic aside at any point if a project comes up. And I will. I mean, if I get a call tomorrow about a cover, I will put that as my priority. Um, Not everyone's in that place, and yeah, that can lead to some bad places. But no, I've been kind of lucky for the past few years. I don't know how long that luck will last, but that's why I'm working on it now. And I was also hungering for a project in April. I literally restarted this whole comic in April. Mid-April, I said I'm going to do this thing, and then I started doing it. But it's actually been pretty quiet on the comics front. I've been doing a lot of personal commissions and stuff like that. And that's what's been sort of keeping the lights on. Though, as you can tell, the lights aren't on right now.
I'm presuming you have electricity.
Yeah. No, we're good. No, I have.
You gave it to me.
There are a few hamsters in the back on a wheel. We're good. It keeps the computer running.
You gave it to me like a mile out, just a mile out. So easy. But that's also something that I think people have to understand, is that it's where your money comes from. I am well aware where my money comes from. It does not come from this show. I ran a Kickstarter. I'm probably going to run another one that helped to fund part of this show for another year. But this is not my main source of income. It provides me a little bit of money. But again, I understand that if I have a job, that thing comes first. If my eBay business is doing well, that thing comes first, and it's nothing against people. And I love interviewing people, but it's the idea that, I understand my priorities. And I think that a lot of creators, it's fun to create things, but it's also you got to just make sure you're financially stable first and foremost. And unfortunately, too many people do not understand that. And I think as you stated, it's a sickness to some degree, and it's very important that people get it because, again, I mean, you have all these covers with Titan, and I also think the idea is that when you do go and you do these action figure covers, it's all of a sudden like I'm now gonna be looking at your webcomic. I now want to actually see it because I'm like, oh snap, Blair Shedd did all these covers. What does his comic look like? What does his interiors look like? If all of his cool covers look like this, and then even going further into that, a web comic is free, which means that it's low investment, and then if I like it, I could throw you a few shekels.
Mhm. And I do have a donate button for like $1 on my webcomic. No one's donated $1, but that's okay. I've had people donate to my coffee account before, so that's fine. It's still I realize right now it's still early days for my webcomic again, even though it started years ago. I stopped for so long that it's basically all new again for a lot of people. And um yeah, you're totally right about people should be a lot more financially aware when they're doing these projects.
People, unfortunately, in America, and not to disparage the entire United States, I'm in Connecticut, so I'm an American citizen. I want to clarify that. Before I state this, people are not financially educated in this country,
No.
and it's a problem, and I don't know the solution. And a lot of people don't want to hear this, but I'm a finance guy. I teach comic book investing, and I teach people how to buy, sell, and basically figure out what books to buy, and it's a science. All full disclosure, I got a class that's coming out probably in October of this year. I mean, it's going to be finalized mid-July, and it's going to be edited all August, and it's going to be good to go in October. But people are just not financially educated, and people also don't understand the B word. It's called a budget. It's a very important word, and the word no is also a very important word. But
Yeah.
except when you're buying Robotech action figure covers, then it's only yes on those.
I approve of this financial wizardry.
I approve of it with a 40% upswing delta. Um, so bad at so many levels. But yeah, where can actually people read this comic? Because it's got magic in it. It's got, sort of Vermont in it. It's
Mhm.
got, New England in it. Obviously, I think I'm part of New England in Connecticut. Um, and at this point, and so where can people find it and even, enjoy it? And how frequently does it come out? And how far is the entire comic along?
Okay. Well, first off, people can find it at my website, which is onegemini.com, ONEGEMINI.com. And I think you're going to post links and such. So uh, if they go there, it's very obvious where the webcomic is and they just can click on it. Uh, but it's a story about this woman who's recovering from a hardship who uh, runs into a person from another realm where magic is real. And unfortunately, some stuff has come over with him from this other realm and is bringing all the folklore of New England to life. So, uh, for instance, if there's a town that has a haunted house that they said, oh, the house has always been haunted, then the haunting can actually happen in this universe. Um, that the stuff that's come over with the stranger from the magical realm will actually bring it to life. In Vermont, we have the uh, uh, cryptid champ, the Champlain Valley or the Champlain Lake monster. So, for instance, that could be a creature that comes to life because of this. Um, and so it's up to this woman and the stranger to go around and try to figure out where these hauntings are happening and how to defeat them.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's getting exciting.
It's
This and
I'm about halfway into the second chapter right now as far as what's been posted. Um, yeah, it's it's a horror fantasy is what I call it. There's there's magic and wonderful things, but there's also a lot of uh, zombie kind of things, and there'll eventually be vampires. There'll be other things that anything that goes bump in the night will be in this book.
Yeah, and obviously, I think you got a lot of other stuff coming out with this, and it does come out, a scene pretty much a month, which could be
Yep.
anywhere from one to God knows how many pages.
I try not to go on for too long, but yeah, one of the longer ones right now is about 7 pages. Next month's is only going to be about 3, but they're going to be all full color because it's a special sequence. Um, yeah, for people who haven't seen it, most of the book is in black and white. I do sort of a reverse Wizard of Oz kind of thing, or well, we're always stuck in Kansas in this book, so to speak. But there are dream sequences, there are visions of the other realm, and they're in color.
Yeah,
That's partially to be easy on me, so I don't have to do full color every page every month. But it also lends a lot of impact to those pages when you get to them.
yeah, and also it's just interesting on a story level when you introduce color and then you introduce more color and take away color because
Mm.
color. I was speaking to Claudia SG Yanasello, or she's known as Scarlet Gotha or
Hmm.
Scarlet Goth.
Okay.
And she's a beast. She's doing the Cowboy Bebop stuff. She's a fellow Titan Comics cover artist. Um, she's great. But we were talking about color theory, and color does also help to tell a story in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. And so when you actually introduce color into a black and white book, it's very powerful. Sin City is a great example of that as well, where or Polar is another good example of that,
Hmm.
by Victor Santos, where it sort of directs where the story's going, and it's a very cool concept. But obviously, I want to back out of comics, and I have one more question before I give you the opportunity to promote yourself. And I'm curious because you've been in comics now for a little over 12 years, and obviously, you've gone through IDW, you've gone through some underground stuff before that. Obviously, a lot of covers with Titan, a lot of big properties, and you are more, I think, traditionally mainstream at this point, but you've also now entered the indie world with your webcomic. And I'm very curious where you think comics are going as story wise, even how they're going to be sold, and even in regards to conventions and the idea of how we're shifting in this world and how more books are being sold. Physical books are being sold digital through places like eBay, Facebook Market, a bunch of digital websites, as well as the entire comic sphere. I feel has shifted. Diamond is in a very tricky place, and you got DC and Marvel in different places now outside of Diamond. So I'm curious from sort of a mainstream position where you think all this is going on the entire business and even the story wise.
That's a good question, and I don't know. I watch closely all of the news just to see. I monitor social media for what my peers are saying, and uh, I do believe we're going to see a lot more web comics in the years to come because it is the easiest way to get your story out there. Because there are no gatekeepers when you're doing that, for better or for worse. Because I still have a friend who's a writer who edits my work, uh, for typos, for that doesn't make sense moments and character errors and such. Uh, and a lot of people don't have that, and that can give you some rough looking artwork or rough looking stories. But I think we're going to see a lot more web comics. I don't know what's going to happen to print comics. I love to have a print copy of everything I work on because that's what I grew up with, and I still like seeing it. Uh, but yeah, I don't know exactly where we're going to be in 5 years, much less 10 or longer.
So I'll just give my position. I think we're going into a world where I have comicsology, so I read a lot of stuff digitally. So I've
Mhm.
read the Robotech stuff digitally.
Mhm.
I have covers that I want physically, but I don't need cover A, B, C, and D of every
Yeah.
single cover. I want certain covers, like I want the action figure covers, but then there's certain books that I don't give a damn about, but I want to read them, but I don't want to own them. If that makes any
Mm.
sense.
Yeah, no.
So I'm at the stage, and also I am also now, because I buy and sell comics. So I also like playing with a $20 book, and I'd rather buy a limited 250 print run and buy more of an exclusive book at this point, and then buy, sell it, or keep it for myself. And I'm actually not necessarily winding down my collection, but I'm becoming more selective on things. I'm also becoming more selective on the covers. And I think that's where comics are going, is that I think it's becoming more, books have to be exclusive. It has to be a limited run. It has to be that you got to really wow me. You got to earn my dollar, you
Mhm.
know? And, I'm probably not going to pick up a Robotech comic for the sake of reading it. I would read it digitally. So that's how I feel, but I still want physical copies of certain books, like those Robotech covers, and I'm slowly accumulating what I don't have. And I made some big gains where I bought 6 of them. I bought the first 6. Then I have sort of a few of the back end and in between, but I'm also not going to buy, cover B of a Robotech that I don't really want that cover. So that's where I think it's going. And I think that it's always going to be around, but I think it's going to become niche, and then it's going to
Oh
become
yeah.
unniche, and then it's going to become niche again. And that's just my take on it. Where I think people are becoming very selective in what they buy, what covers they buy, and also who they buy. And for instance, people are fans of you, so there's a bunch of people probably who don't even care necessarily about the book. They just want your cover because they like your art style. And I think that's also where we're going to. And as an investor, I mean, I'll drop a name, Paul Green on a Zenoscope book. That I know that book is going to be worth $50, and I bought it for 25. So I know it's going to sell, and I know that it's sought after, and that the people who buy those books, we're a niche club. Even if we're not selling it, we are Paul Green fans. So I think that's also where things are going. But that's just my take on the entire industry. Is I think people are becoming what's happened to the NBA, where players are bigger than teams right now.
Hmm.
And I think comics are going to follow in a lot of ways. And I think it's already started to happen. But that's my take on it. And I don't know if you have any comments on that.
I, I that sounds pretty. That's pretty sound to me. Is what you're saying? I mean, I'm just thinking of like my comment was more about the self-publishers from a creative perspective. What are creators like me going to do, or what are some of the newer creators going to do? But as far as what's going to happen to the industry as it currently stands, I'm bad at guessing.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure it out. And I have a theory, Papa, but I could be very wrong. But that's just what I'm seeing, and I'm reacting.
Mhm.
And it could sway the other way, and I could be completely wrong. But that's just what I think, is that people are now following artists and writers. And I think now you're on team so and so. I like your action figure covers from Robotech. And so now I'm following and I'm seeking those covers out because it's Robotech and you did it. And so now you're going to be in my Instagram feed, for instance, because I'm like, okay, cool. What other thing are you going to do? And when are you going to do a next action figure? And all of a sudden, you do a cool action figure thing. I'm like, I'm all over that, and that's where I think things are going. And I think it started a few years ago, and I think it's only gotten bigger. But again, that's what I think, and that's where I think it's going. But I digress because I could be completely wrong. This is not financial advice. This is just my theory. If you want financial advice, go speak to a certified financial advisor or planner. But that's on everybody else, and I am not that. Nor do I want to be yours. I'm just gonna say that to everybody out there. At least not for free. I don't want to be
No, well.
yours. But anyway, I do want to give you a chance to self promote. You can promote anything you want, Robotech, where people can find your webcomic, where people can buy your stuff, where people can get commissions from you. If somebody has a cover, I deal with a lot of people on Kickstarter. I don't know if you're opposed to doing, covers for
Oh,
indie
yeah,
people,
yeah.
but
No, that's
all
that's
that
pretty
fun
cool.
stuff. Social
Uh,
media, fun stuff like that.
Well, luckily, if you go to my website at onegemini.com, ONEGEMINI,
In
I
the
can spell.
comment section, everybody. It's in the comment section.
Okay. And it's, yeah, if you go to that uh, website, it has links to all my socials there. I'm One Gemini on just about every social media except for Instagram, where I'm One Gemini _ studios. But that there's a link directly from that on my website. My website's mostly like a link tree right now. It just has links to everything else. But yeah, you can check out my webcomic, The Worlds Between Us, there. That is updated basically mid-month on New Comic Book Day. And yeah, that right now that's what most of my work is doing. I have some commissions that I've completed recently that I'll be able to share. Those will usually be on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and uh, yeah, I would, yeah, if you're an indie publisher looking for a cover, reach out to me. I'm totally willing to work with just about whoever. I mean, if I think my artwork is a fit for your project, yeah, contact me.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna keep saying it. I've been saying it forever. You have to support comic writers. You have to support comic artists. You have to support people in comics. And the way you do that is, A, you buy their stuff. You buy their covers. You buy their books. You buy their independent projects. If they're running an Indiegogo, Kickstarter, they got a donation button. They got a Patreon. They got a Buy Me a Coffee. You actually go and you support it. Furthermore, once you support it, or if you can't support it because money's tight, sharing it out goes a
Yeah.
long way. Say, hey, so and so has this really cool web comic. It's free to read. Check it out. Goes a long way, because if somebody then becomes a new reader and then they become a permanent reader, that further helps that artist out or that writer out. Also, following people on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I can't think of any other social medias, but I think we have the gist. That's massively important too, and it's free. And reading the comic, if I didn't already say it, I'm going to say it again, is free. So please go do that, because it goes a long way and it's very, very important in that regard. As far as I'm concerned, also I'll say this again. Again, if you like what Blair does, or you want your own action figure, thing, and there's a bunch of people who have really cool things, there you go. I'm sure Blair can do an action figure cover
Oh
for
yeah.
you, and of your character, and I'm sure something could be worked out in that fashion. Not to put you on the spot.
No,
Um,
no, I'm open for commissions usually, so and that's also found in my social media.
And then as far as I'm concerned, and obviously support indie, as far as I'm concerned, obviously, I like when people like, share, check this out. Follow me on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics, Instagram, Pop Anime Comics, Facebook, Pop Anime Comics. Also, I do have a red bubble where you can buy this shirt. It is a Gundam shirt. It's making fun of Taco Bell, the most interesting man in the world, and Fallout, as well as Gundam. So if I didn't mention that already, so we go check that out. Links up above. And I appreciate all support everybody throws me. I have a Buy Me a Coffee too. You can check that out if you want to do this. I offer live reads, a variety of other products. If you're interested in advertising on this show, feel free to hit me up on any of my social media and just say hello, because it's not going to cost you anything to ask what my rates are. And on that note, go support indie, and I'm going to give you the final word.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun. And yeah, everyone go check out The Worlds Between Us, because I think you'll really like it. And if I'm lying, then you probably didn't like it as much as I thought you would.
And I don't think I could have said that any better than you did. So everybody, that is a wrap.
Cool.